to hear this case presents. For almost 50 years, the right of women to make healthcare decisions has been affirmed and reaffirmed even by anti-choice justices. So many agree. It is alarming. To overturn Roe would revoke nearly 5 decades of established jurisprudence. The court's decision to hear this Mississippi case is particularly disturbing given that 16 states have already passed laws that attack women's health care rights. A negative decision in the Dobbs case could put millions of women at risk, especially women of color, of lower incomes, or who live in rural areas. For 31 years, the protections in Roe v. Wade have been enshrined in Connecticut law. We have been very clear in our state that a woman's right to choose is an essential health care right and a human right. And so we've come to a critical moment in our country for women's health care rights. With the future of our freedom to make health care decisions on the line, the governor and I want the people of Connecticut to know that we will do everything in our power to continue to protect women's rights. We will fight to protect access to safe reproductive health care at every level, at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And in fact, as we speak today, the House is debating the bill to prevent deceptive advertising by health crisis centers, pregnancy centers. And I just want to say thank you to Representative Jillian Gilchrist, who's been standing for hours on the House floor debating this bill, which passed our state Senate 2 weeks ago today. And I was very honored to be presiding over the state Senate when that happened. But it goes to show that there are attacks on women's health care rights every day, and we have to stand committed to continue to protect the important rights of women. There's still so much work to do. We won't be complacent, and we will continue to fight for women's health and women's rights every day. So with that, it is my great honor to introduce our great Attorney General, William Tong.
Thank you, Governor, for always, throughout your long career, being such a strong advocate for civil rights and for the rule of law and the Constitution and for women and a woman's right to choose. And I want to thank the other governor, Governor Lamont, also for, but today she's the governor. So the other governor for Governor Lamont's strong commitment to this issue and for being steadfast and an ally in the fight to protect women and a woman's right to choose and reproductive health care and freedom. And I want to thank Planned Parenthood and NARAL and all of our leadership organizations on the front lines in this fight, and it's our honor to support them and fight alongside them. So as if we needed a reminder, this should be a wake-up call, that there is a war raging in this country, and it's a war on American women. It's a war on their health care, on their reproductive freedom, on their right to decide what happens to their own bodies, on their civil rights, and on their constitutional rights. And standing here as your Attorney General with Lieutenant Governor, I will confirm yet again that we will fight tooth and nail and do everything we can in defense of those rights. But make no mistake, this is a full, as you said, full frontal attack, offensive in that war on American women. The Dobbs case strikes at the very heart of Roe versus Wade that has stood for nearly 50 years, nearly half a century. It has been concluded by the U.S. Supreme Court that a woman has the basic right to choose what happens to her own body. The certified question in the Dobbs case is whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. There's no ambiguity in that question. This question, in other words, strikes at the very heart of whether Roe continues to be good law and whether a woman has a right to choose and make decisions for herself about her own health care and her own reproductive freedom. And what is really scary about this question and why this case is so important is that it asks the question whether we as a country are going to prioritize a woman's right to make her own decisions and her civil liberties and constitutional rights, or whether we're going to prioritize the rights of, in this case, state governments and the interests of governments across the state, including the state of Mississippi. So let me just point out a couple of really important points. First of all, Mississippi passed a state law banning all abortions after 15 weeks of gestation. There is only one abortion facility left in Mississippi, and they sued to enjoin this law. And the district court found on summary judgment that this law is unconstitutional. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed. And so it went to the Supreme Court, where there's a petition for certiorari. In a rare situation, this question, whether cert should be granted for this case, was considered at 22 separate conferences. They really struggled with this question. That is highly unusual, to debate 22 different times whether they're even going to hear this case. And then, on behalf of the petitioners in this case, who are anti-choice and anti-women, 18 of my Republican colleagues, attorneys general from other parts of the country, filed an amicus brief in support of granting cert. And I'm proud to say that I stood with Democratic attorneys general in opposing the granting of cert, and we filed an amicus brief in 2019. It is highly unusual, by the way, for an amicus brief to be filed in opposition to a petition for cert. But we thought it was so important this time that we stood up and did that. Let me just close by saying, I don't have to tell you how precarious our rights are right now, and how close we've come to the brink so many times in this country over the last 4 years and maybe longer. And I will tell you that I was getting a Christmas tree in December at Stu Leonard's with my kids when I got a call on my cell phone that General Paxton of Texas and 17 other state attorneys general went to the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court to throw out the results of the presidential election and to overturn the results of that election. And so I bought the Christmas tree, I went home, and I got to work. And we stared down those 18 AGs and those states, and we preserved the integrity of our election. And thank goodness we had the peaceful transfer of power. They are trying that again. They have gone back to the Supreme Court to overturn our fundamental rights and to turn the Constitution on its head. And I promise you, as your Attorney General, I will do everything I can to stop them. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good afternoon. My name is Gretchen Raffa from Planned Parenthood Votes Connecticut. Anti-abortion politicians have been working for decades to shift the balance of the court for just this moment. The decision to review the pre-viability 15-week abortion ban in Mississippi should alarm all supporters of reproductive rights and freedom. This is a direct challenge to long-settled law, and even taking this case goes against 50 years of precedent guaranteeing our right to abortion. In a country where your ability to access abortion already depends on your income and zip code, the court's decision could even further decimate access. Let's be clear, this case has nothing to do with science or health care. This is about eliminating access to abortion. Already, we've seen over 500 restrictions that have been introduced in states with the intent on ending abortion and overturning Roe v. Wade. State lawmakers, emboldened by the new makeup of the Supreme Court and the 200-plus federal judges appointed by the Trump administration, are pushing a harmful agenda against our rights and our freedoms. In hearing this case, the U.S. Supreme Court is defying the will of the people. There's no state where abortion is not supported. In fact, 77% of Americans don't want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. And we know who these bans hurt the most, right? State laws preventing access to abortion disproportionately harm people who already face significant barriers to accessing health care, including Black people, communities of color, people with low income, immigrant communities, and members of the LGBTQ+ community. Thankfully, in Connecticut, we have a long, proud history of protecting reproductive rights with a bipartisan effort, including the 1990 vote when the state legislature overwhelmingly supported codifying Roe into state law. Our state government has continued to prove that Connecticut stands as a leader in protecting and advancing reproductive health rights and access. This fight, though, is bigger than just protecting Roe. We know that the protections afforded in Roe is a right in name only in many states. The Hyde Amendment and all abortion coverage restrictions in federal law must end now. Congress must immediately pass, and President Biden must sign the Women's Health Protection Act into law. This critical piece of legislation, sponsored by our own champion, Senator Blumenthal, protects against medically unnecessary abortion restrictions being pushed forward by state politicians, including in the case of Roe v. Wade being overturned. And here in Connecticut, right across the street, our state legislature has the opportunity to continue to be a leader in our country, advancing reproductive freedom even further. Legislation is already moving through the General Assembly to make this a reality, and we call on our champions to act on it now, without delay, and making it easier for people to get the care they need. This includes policies that will protect patients' privacy when accessing health care, declaring racism as a public health crisis, improving maternal health and birth outcomes, increasing access to doula care, health care access for undocumented immigrants, and investing in reproductive health care to ensure everyone, regardless of their income or health care coverage, can access the preventative care they need. We thank the administration and the legislature for investing in this essential reproductive health care. Listen, it's really important that people are paying attention right now because we've got a lot of work to still do. The fact that SCOTUS agreed to take this case means our access to abortion is at stake. Our rights, our freedom, our health care should not depend on where we live or how much money we have. That's why Planned Parenthood won't stop fighting for policies and for the people that have full access to comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care, including safe legal abortion. Reproductive health care is health care, abortion is health care, and health care is a human right. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Liz Gustafson and I'm the State Director of NARAL Pro-Choice Connecticut. Thanks to the confirmation of Trump's anti-choice justices to the Supreme Court, the anti-choice movement believes that the end of Roe v. Wade is on the horizon. The burdens when seeking care disproportionately fall on those who are already facing the most significant barriers due to decades of systemic racism, white supremacy, and health inequities, including Black, Indigenous, and people of color, LGBTQ people, those with low incomes, and others who face barriers to care. Also, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disproportionately affected these same communities, has only exacerbated these inequities. Right now, we are witnessing attempts by anti-choice lawmakers who are ramping up their attacks on abortion access in a desperate bid to retain power and control. With a new anti-choice supermajority on the court, anti-choice state lawmakers have launched an all-out assault on reproductive freedom in hopes that a challenge would lead to the rollback or end of Roe. But this is not occurring in a vacuum. Although our state is not facing the same threats or attacks that others might be, state lawmakers right now are repeating the same anti-choice talking points, the same anti-choice messaging in attempts to threaten progress in our state. Right now, anti-choice organizations who are opposed to abortion continue to advertise information, resources, and pregnancy-related care in deceptive, misleading, and untrue ways across our state. Make no mistake, anti-choice pregnancy centers are the front line of the anti-abortion movement, and they exist right here in Connecticut. Right now, state lawmakers are fighting to pass this bill, SB 835. And just as we should trust individuals to make the best decisions for their lives, their futures, and their families, lawmakers should ensure that Connecticut residents can access the reproductive health care they need, including abortion, and trust the advertising when seeking to do so. This bill is about transparency and honesty in advertising. When someone is seeking reproductive health care, they should be able to find it without confusion or deception. Again, whether CPCs purport to provide and meet the needs of parenting individuals, at their core, they are an extension of the anti-choice movement, and there is no room for that in our state. Abortion is healthcare. Abortion is essential. And from the Supreme Court of the United States to the current debate happening right now inside of our Capitol, NARAL Pro-Choice Connecticut and all of our incredible allies are going to keep fighting to ensure that everyone, regardless of age, race, gender identity, sexuality, immigration, or economic status, can decide if, when, or how they are going to start or grow their families in safe and healthy communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job.
Hi, I'm Alana Bildner. I'm a lawyer for the ACLU of Connecticut. And we at the ACLU stand in solidarity, not only with our wonderful colleagues here in Connecticut and our elected officials, but with every person whose health, rights, and future are threatened by abortion bans across the country, Texas today, and by the potential for Roe v. Wade to fall at the U.S. Supreme Court. And we stand in solidarity because, as my colleagues have said, abortion is health care, it's a legal right, it's a civil right, and fundamentally it is a human right. That means reproductive freedom because it is the ability to decide about our own future and lives. Abortion is a critical, necessary part of that freedom. And again, whenever and wherever abortion access is restricted, the people who suffer first and worst are people of color, immigrants, and people who are poor. Abortion is still legal today in all 50 states, and we're fighting to keep it that way. And we're not alone. The majority of people here in Connecticut, just like the majority of people in Mississippi, in Texas, in Georgia, in Kentucky, in Ohio, actually all across this country, are pro-choice. Today, we focus in Connecticut on access because it's not enough to say that Connecticut will not go back, and we really appreciate that we are a leader here and have been since 1990 in ensuring reproductive freedoms. But we have to move forward, as my colleagues have said, to ensure that no matter what happens federally, abortion access here is guaranteed just as legal abortion rights are. And abortion access is not a reality still today for many people in our state and across the country. People who live right here in Connecticut still have to scrape together money and seek help from strangers just to afford abortion care. They have to navigate deceptive advertising from fake clinics. They have to hide explanations of benefits documents from abusive partners just to access something that is their legal right in this state and in this country. So it's on us and on every elected official in our state to do better for them. Our laws are strong, we can do better. Right now there are bills active in our General Assembly that would take us forward, including one that would take vital steps to make sure that those explanations of benefits documents and medical information is kept private. So if Roe falls at the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, Connecticut is and must continue to be in solidarity with people in other states who are most harmed by abortion bans, as well as the people here in our state who still need access. And we look forward to continuing that fight with all of you. Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you to our media partners for coming, and we'll take any questions that